presentation. I will now give the lead to Atso, and he will just orchestrate the discussion and the Q&A. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for all the announcements so far. As always, I think I need some time to process all the interesting information that we were able to hear. I had, of course, a list of topics and questions, but I think that the list is now 3 times longer, so probably we will not be able to discuss all of those questions. And I mean, what is clear to me that we should have at least a conference on each of those topics that you mentioned, because there would be enough materials to comment and to dig deeper. So, I mean, I would direct my first question to Philippe, but I would like also others to contribute and to comment whenever they feel they have something interesting to say, and I'm sure that you do, and also to Emmanuel that goes also. Emmanuel, be free to give us your opinion. So to begin with something that Andy said at the end, and of course it is question of how we define sport, and maybe we should speak about traditional sports and new emerging sports in some way. But Philippe, one question and one sub-question. According to your long experience in Olympic committee, and you witnessed all the changes that technology caused in sports, can you make maybe a comparison and to comment, is the AI going to have also the influence that the big changes in technology so far had? Can AI maybe even bigger influence? And what would you say, is it going to be more on individual basis, or maybe what we heard also on the team basis, to kind of to align the strategies, to give more data on the teams, or maybe to optimize the individual performance with giving the more data? And also the sub question. Oh, okay, maybe we just answer this first one, because yeah, then it's going to be too long. Please, Philippe.
I am quite sensitive to the question you ask, because it relates to what Andy said at the beginning of his speech. It's related to philosophy, and I think it's important, because for me, why am I so interested in sport? Because as I said earlier, sport gives us the possibility to reflect on our communities and the evolution of the world. And in no way technology has a moral sense. It's beyond good and evil. It's the use of technology which is challenging. And to answer your question, I would like to go back to a very old and Latin definition of sport, which was about mens sana in corpore sano. It's Juvenal who said that it's a sound body, it's a sound spirit in a sound body. And what is really interesting when it comes to technology and when it comes to artificial intelligence is how are we going to use all the information we are receiving and the processing information. For me, I would like to avoid a situation where the human athletes becomes the robots with the instructions delivered by his trainer or artificial. We need to have the balance. We need to know ourselves. Connais-toi toi-même et tu connaîtras l'univers et les dieux. Know yourself and you know the universe and the gods. So it's really something which is reflecting, for me, on the balance between the physical activity and the understanding of what we are doing. Wearables gives us the possibility to better understand how our body reacts. It gives us the possibility to better train, to, as Andy explained, to avoid injuries and to be more aware of our humanity. But I think it's important to avoid a situation where we are completely outsourcing the decision, because in that case we would break the balance between mens sana in corpore sano. We would break the balance between a healthy mind in a healthy body. And the second question you ask regarding will artificial intelligence will help us on the individual level or the collective level, I'm like Andy. I believe it's a good thing. I believe technology is bringing new opportunities for us. And Andy has listed some elements. Mehdi did also for the esports side. On a personal level, I think we will see huge breakthroughs in team building, in team building, and in a gameplay. And as Mehdi explained as well, artificial intelligence gives us the possibility to identify very quickly amongst many players people who are complementing us on the individual level and put us in a more efficient team. Mm-hmm. So for me, the value add of artificial intelligence when it comes to sport will be also in the team play and the collective intelligence.
Great. I have a follow-up question, but just to give the chance to others, maybe to contribute also to this first question. Okay, you can even join later, of course. So maybe to get also to one of the core ideas of this webinar. So when I was speaking with different groups of people, they raised different concerns and comments. So some of them said, look, we will have so much data processed that prediction algorithms are going to just crunch them all, and that we will know in advance, as you also mentioned and some others, we will know in advance what is going to be the outcome of almost every match. But then others said, no, this cannot happen because sport is so unpredictable with so many factors, physical factors, players, psychological factors, that basically, and according to chaos theory, all of those small changes can cause the completely different outcome. So it is not possible to mathematically model it. So they said, no, we don't believe that AI is going to make the predictions that are going to make the betting industry obsolete, because everything is going to be known. So what are your thoughts there? So are we going to have the perfect prediction, or it's going to stay completely unpredictable, or somewhere in between? Because what was also kind of interesting comment on that part is that people said, but we have very precise predictions now without AI, because they said you can predict who is going to win based on how much money they have. The clubs in many sports with the most of the resources, and then we get to this ethical component that I'm going to develop maybe further. Those who have most resources and most of the money they can spend, they're going to win. We cannot maybe predict which one club is going to be there at the top, but we can say those 5 are going to be at the top and those 5 are going to be at the bottom. So be free to comment.
Yeah. So maybe I could comment a bit on that, because
Sure.
you know, in gaming, we always compare ourselves to animals. And usually in gaming, regarding the fact of being predictable, we have what we call sheep, as you know, following the influencers. We have whales, who are the people who expend the most in the games. And if you look, for instance, in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East part, it's where you have less communities active, but at the same time, you also have the people that are, let's say, spending the most in the games. And the fact is that the answer for me is in between. Why? Because you have some people that create tendencies, create content, create behaviors, and are, let's say, innovative and creative. Those people are opinion leaders or early adopters. And you have the other people that are following those people, viewing them, and having some habits in how they consume. I talk only about esports, but how they consume content and how they are activated by brands, and they have, let's say, the way they consume it is a habit. So basically, if you meet with the calculations, you are able to make the habit of some users, and you put them in cohorts, in groups, so that you can understand. Let's say in 7 times on 10, they're doing that. If we do this, sometimes you can make statistics. It doesn't mean, of course, that it's 100% true. Why? Because you don't know how many money the people have in their wallet and what in their mind they're thinking of doing. Maybe you want to go to the theater with your girlfriend, or you want to go on vacation. So basically, you don't know how people want to let's say react. But the fact is that putting together some parameters increases, let's say, the potential that you do, let's say, the third action that goes after the two first ones. So this is how I feel about it. But usually it depends on what you're expecting for them to do. If it's something that is not, let's say, a big part of their budget, if you want them to buy something, you have a higher, let's say, probability that the actions goes together when we talk about ships. Whales, different. If you pay a lot in the game, and I don't mean the products, I mean in the game, the in-game behavior, you pay in the game to, let's say, show yourself, do, let's say, self-branding. Those people are more dedicated to the community and they want to shine in the community. So basically, they don't follow, as you said, and they're more like spontaneous to expand when they feel like it's the right moment to do it. And the right moment to do it is personal to each of us, regarding how we see ourselves in the community and how we want to value ourselves. Maybe I will buy the last shoes of Jordan or Adidas or something because I want to show my friends I had that, I don't know, 200 units special edition. I had the first one, so I will expand for that because I have a different goal than the fact of I just have a habit that I buy some Kit Kat or I don't know, any other chocolate bar because it's the time to buy it, you know.
Okay, so you basically believe that it is in the middle. We cannot say that it's completely predictable, but we cannot also say that it will be completely unpredictable. So what do you guys think? Philip, yeah, raising hand.
I'm a French person, so I don't understand anything about cricket, but I know that in India, a team has started predicting the outcomes of the T20, which is apparently the Indian Cricket League. And they had 4 or 5 years ago, 70% of accuracy in determining who would be the winners of the league. And they have continued to improve their computations and calculations. So I do think personally that we will have the tools to collect more and more information and to be able to increase our capacity to assess the probability of winning. And this is it. And we were talking about the financial power. This is why structures like UEFA have created the financial fair play. They need to keep the drama. They need to make sure that it's not always the same winners. And I know the joke that football is a team of is a competition between two teams, and at the end the Germany wins. I know very well, but I do think that we will have on the one hand a willingness to be able to predict more and more precisely. But I do think, as Andy said, that technology will also provide us new ways of expressing ourselves, of enriching the sports, and as we are doing in Futurous, and probably that's something we can also do with professors like Andy and experts like Andy's, but we can also create new sports and new competitions.
Great, thanks. Andy?
Yes, thank you. It's great to come in on this question because it's really fascinating to think about how we define the system. And I think that the initial sort of proposition is to imagine that it's a closed system, that in fact, if we can measure everything, have enough data, then we can predict it eventually. But of course, these are incredibly complex environments. So theoretically, it might be possible, but in a practical sense, it's the number of variations is so great as to become mind-boggling. I'll give you a comparison. So if we think about football, in comparison to chess, and we're big chess players in my household. You would agree that football's a much more complex game. There's much more variability, unpredictability, whereas chess pieces can only move certain ways. And we know that after the first two moves in chess, each player's move, there are 400 possible boards that may develop. So 400 scenarios that may occur. After the second pair of turns, there are around 200,000 possible games that may emerge out of that scenario. After the third turn, so after each player's played 3 moves, there are 121 million scenarios that may emerge. And this is a relatively closed system as a game. And yet already we're into figures of variations that are ridiculously, mind-bogglingly high. So I think that sports where there's complexity, where there's physics, where there are laws of physics that we still don't quite understand, because of course this model that we have as sort of closed or open systems that may be predictable or unpredictable are often based on sort of natural laws of physics, where we know that if we get to the nano scale, those laws don't even apply. So I think I would be very much on the side of unpredictability ensuing, but I'd also say that as sports become more predictable, so too will our interests divert elsewhere. So yes,
Exactly.
the 100-meter sprint final at the Olympic Games may not be that interesting 30 years from now, where the difference between first and eighth is in fact imperceptible, but we might then choose to do other sports, and that's what I think will happen.
Great. Well, thanks for the comment. I can say from my side that I, as a gamer myself, still playing Counter-Strike from time to time, I was able just to see recently ending of one tournament, which was completely crazy. So one player did something that you would never assume that it will happen in, I don't know, 10,000 years. So I'm not sure that that psychological approach to the game would be something that any algorithm or any amount of data would ever predict, so it would be impossible to win the bet in that place. So maybe one short question for Mehdi, what he mentioned regarding e-gaming and the companies that are using the AI. So do you maybe have the information, so what companies developing games have the best AI teams and which are investing most in their games in the sense of the development? Is there any kind of comparison or data in the field?
Okay, I will try to answer this in 2 different ways. The first thing is you have like esports and you have also classic gaming, let's say solo games, multiplayer games you play against the computer. At Bandai Namco, which is let's say between the third and the fourth biggest console game publisher, it's a Japanese one. They have 4,200 developers, okay, and 10% of them are working on AI in games.
Wow.
And they work on different projects because they have different studios, but basically some of the core competencies at Ubisoft in France and Canada, or at Bandai Namco, they work as let's say a central focal point. So when you need some AI, you talk to that team, whatever the game you're working on. Okay, so let's say that one of the AI that amazed the most the players and frustrated them the most was the one of Dark Souls 2 and 3. Why? Because that game is a game in which you are, let's say, a knight and you evolve in a fantasy world, and you have to fight against skeletons and many other monsters and stuff. The issue is that in the first game was known to be super difficult, but the fact is that the AI was predictable because it was doing the same move. So when you know the pattern, then you can counterattack and you can kill the monster. The second game, they said, no, now the game will have itself a memory and will know how you achieved that boss, how you achieved that monster. So now the skeleton knows that you can kill 2 at once. They will come at you at 10, and they will attack you from the back because 70% of the time you get hit. So it's super tricky. So the players came in number to complain about that at the game publisher. So it was like a strike, like it's too difficult.
It's interesting.
We buy
it's good to know. I mean, I can believe it's really frustrating.
So I can say that in the fantasy games, we always are looking for greatness. You need to kill a dragon. It has to not be easy. So you have to understand that. So it's up to the game developers to fix, because they have the capability and the calculation power to put the games so difficult that we as humans cannot improve fast enough, and maybe we'll need several hours to even win the game. Okay.
Well, I can
That
make some connections with the behavioral psychology,
yeah.
which some are researching even deeper and deeper. And that, well, respecting the time, that leads me unfortunately to my, well, last question, maybe question and a half. Andy mentioned one very interesting term. It's Sport 2.0. So can you maybe shortly elaborate what is it, what is going to happen there, and is it connected with artificial intelligence?
Well, I would say quite simply that I think some of the best sports have yet to be invented, and actually the bringing together of the traditional sports world with the esports world, I think, is where we see that promise being fulfilled. I think it's an exciting time to be working in technology, because in fact it also means that we can expand the number of people that are involved as well. There are many people that turn away from sports quite early on in life, so I'm quite optimistic that this integration of digital and physical experiences will create a whole new world of exciting experiences.
Great. I mean, I think that this is a very powerful message. This is something that we might quote you on, like the best sports are yet to be invented. This is very, very positive and very interesting. For me, I mean, I will just leave this question hanging in the air. I think that there could be also some concerns that all of those things that we develop in sports and some strategies, can they be then applied later in the military, for example, because probably there could be some things that could be transferable, and then we are also getting into this question of ethics that Emmanuel and I are especially dealing with. But I will leave this for our next webinar, maybe also on the similar topic. I can see that Philippe is also smiling, which means that I kind of touched interesting topic. But yeah, let's discuss it also further. I would like to thank you all and Emmanuel. It was really a great pleasure, a lot of interesting data, a lot of interesting information, and definitely we are going to follow up on what we heard today. And last word to Philippe, who was our basically the main organizer and the lead of this event. Philippe, thank you very much, and please,
Thank you.
yes, give us your last words.
It's not a question of the last word. It's because you were talking about sport and military, and Coubertin used to say that sport without culture is just a military exercise. so it's and when he created the Olympics, you had the cultural element alongside the sport element. But clearly, this discussion with you, Emmanuel, and Andy, and Mehdi gave us the possibility to see that yes, we are talking about something complex in terms of there are multiple stakeholders. And the sky is the limit, and I'm convinced on a personal and professional level that, as Andy said, the best sports will be invented, and it's a never-ending story.
Great. Well, thanks for this quote and for the inspiring words. It's time to close now, and thank you all, and thank our audience. I'm sure that they enjoyed it, and let's connect. As Andy before posted, LinkedIn profiles are always available. Connect and join the community that is participating in this discussion. Thank you all, and I'm officially pronouncing the end of this webinar. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.